There we go. Hey guys, now you've joined us on A Valid Answer. We got a little bit ahead of ourselves and streamed to our own page, which is A Valid Answer. We should be streaming to Kerncast. So here we are now on Kerncast. Thank you everybody for joining us. Sorry we missed a little bit of that. So tell them a little bit about what's going on for those who are just joining us at Kerncast now.
Okay, well, all levity aside, we're going to talk about millennials today. Millennials are a pretty hot topic. We're talking about how millennials are lazy and so on. And personally, I think that's a false stereotype. I think I've got some data to demonstrate that that's the case. At least the data testifies that that's the case. Scott, on the other hand, has some competing information or competing perspective that he wants to share.
So welcome to A Valid Answer. Yeah, we're talking about that. Welcome to A Valid Answer. Scott and Marshall, a pastor and an atheist, where we discuss, everything that we can think of and everything that would normally start arguments and fistfights. We haven't gotten to a fistfight yet, but we are waiting for that time. I've taken the gloves off and taken them away, so it's just going to be bare knuckles if that happens. So, yeah, a little bit on millennials. This stems from a conversation that started online on Facebook earlier this week. So I'm constantly getting information. I'm constantly just looking this up, looking that up. Mostly it has to do with movies and stuff like that. But a lot of times I'll chase a rabbit hole and be like, what is that? And then follow this link and then follow that link. And then when we talk about stuff, it's based on things. I've seen this, I've read this. I don't have the link right now. I don't have this right now. This is just compiling of things that I have. And if I don't have that information, I will usually say, I don't really know if this is the details on this. I remember at one point reading about this, but I can't find the article right now, that type of thing and stuff like that. So this one I got really interested in, and I'm okay. And I just sat for a few hours and just went down the rabbit hole and asked the questions that I don't know that you are asking. So explain a little bit of what we were talking about online about is it biology or economics? Put up the dichotomy that you put up.
A lot of people I hear argue that millennials are fundamentally different from previous generations. And if that's the case, I figure logically we would expect to see something in their biological development, their mental development, that is somehow different. And of course, that's not the case. We know, in fact, that's absurd.
Yeah, there's
evolution
an actual
works on such broad timelines.
Yeah.
In fact, 6,000 years ago in ancient Sumeria, there was recorded on a clay tablet a father's instructions to his son, and he was saying, pay attention in school.
Even back then it said F Trump, huh?
No.
Sorry.
No. He said, pay attention in school. I think there's end times prophecies back then, but what it said, pay attention in school and then come directly home afterwards. Don't loiter around in the public square. And this is ancient Sumeria. So,
don't go walk in the streets, kids.
Yeah, it's always every generation has always said those darn kids, you darn kids. It's the music you listen to, probably for all I know.
So what's different?
Well, I think what's different is economics.
So you're making the argument that we have never in the history of humanity faced economic times like this?
Of course. I don't know. I think the closest we've seen economic times like this would probably be the Gilded Age. You'd have to probably go back to the 20s or 30s or even before.
What sparked this? What sparked this
go back about a century.
Well, what sparked this was a discussion about, or at least part of a discussion about why they're waiting so long to be married, why they're not buying houses, as unseen as previous generations, multiple generations.
Why aren't they buying diamonds?
Why? No. Why aren't they buying houses?
No, these are questions.
But I'm saying specifically, why aren't they buying houses? Why are they waiting so long to get married? Your answer was economic.
Economics.
So,
yes.
So that's why I'm saying is this is a unique economic time from any other time because there has never been this sweep away from marriage and this sweep away from buying homes. This is unique to their generation. So you're saying the only reason for that is economics, which means we've never had an economic situation like this, because if we had, then you would have seen these same sweeps in those generations. If it was economic.
So you're asking me if our situation is economically unique, and I think the short answer to that would actually be yes. There is way more wealth and productivity in the world today than at any time in human recorded history.
Okay.
There's technological development. The technology is certainly different.
So no generation has had fewer access to wealth.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, why are they not buying homes? Why are they waiting to get married? You say it's economic.
Yes, because...
So what is it about this economic situation that is unique that's causing those results?
Well, I guess I can.
Because that's your argument. Your
Let me
argument.
briefly run over my
Okay.
economic data here. Okay, the last time we probably I'm just going to say since the 1970s, wages have been relatively flat. Productivity has at least doubled, if not tripled, as well as prices. You would expect that if productivity increases, then prices should drop, but they have not.
Inflation.
So-
Prices always go up.
Right, but you also have higher productivity, which should increase supply, which should satisfy demand at lower prices. But it's not
inflation. But
happening.
inflation always happens. Inflation keeps prices up.
No, inflation does not always happen. Inflation happens as part of the business cycle. There are times when inflation accelerates and happens at a faster rate, which is what we're starting to
but
see
I'm
now.
saying through
And
history,
you
yes,
can have some
it goes like
deflation.
this. It goes like this, but it's always
Yes.
on a rise.
The trend tends to always be up. And
Yeah.
in fact, you don't want deflation. A little bit of inflation is just fine
Right.
and part of a healthy
So
economy.
why isn't inflation
deflation is devastating.
why isn't inflation accounting for the increase in productivity?
I'm trying to process your question here.
You're saying productivity has been up, so therefore prices should be down, but inflation is not. Wouldn't it be countered by inflation? That would keep the prices the same.
what happens is supply should bring the prices down.
And inflation brings it back up, so shouldn't it stay the same?
Well, inflation is just people, usually
A natural rise in inflation and a natural
It's
rise.
a decline in purchasing power of the dollar.
Mhm.
It's actually technically a rise in prices over time is technically how inflation is defined.
Right.
But I like to think of it in terms of purchasing power, and what it means is that your dollar purchases much less over time.
Yep.
And it is a natural part of a healthy economy. But as inflation rises, that should also put pressure on wages to rise.
Okay.
The problem, I think, and I think maybe a year or two or more ago, you and I had a similar discussion, and you mentioned how automation
Yeah.
is factoring into the equation. I think that's spot on because automation is really what's making us much more productive than we were back in the 70s when we had a world that really didn't have a lot of automation,
But
which
with
is another
that
one of
is
the things that
fewer
makes
jobs.
these times highly unique.
Okay.
You know?
But in
So-
what way does that affect the choices millennials are making in purchasing homes, where they're living, and when they're getting married?
What, technology?
And economy.
Economics?
Yeah.
Well, if your wages are flat
Okay.
and your prices are up, like,
Okay.
for example, the price of college tuition has increased 300 times. Homes are astronomically high compared to what they were. Rents also astronomically high. Healthcare, astronomically higher than it was. You now have a lot less purchasing power because you're spending what you make on your rent, on your healthcare, on your student loans. And that doesn't leave a whole lot of money left over to move out of the parents' house, to get married, or to plan a big fancy wedding. A lot of people are just kind of winging it. You know, they're having their friend marry them, or they're not getting married at all.
Yeah.
A lot of people are simply kind of shacking up together to combine their incomes, and it's as much an economic choice as it is a romantic decision, if you will. And so there's a lot of that going on. It's literally changing the moral fabric of our society, I would imagine, from a Christian perspective, because now you have people cohabitating and having children when they're not even married.
Yep.
And that's because there's no incentive really to be married. And you do have the two incomes, but even with two incomes now, the man and the woman have to work in order to maintain the same standard of living that you and I took for granted when we were young.
And I want to challenge that with a few stats, because I don't
Sure.
believe that is actually what has happened. That do you know what the average mortgage is in the United States?
No, what is it?
Just slightly over $1,000.
That's the mortgage payment, monthly mortgage payment.
Monthly
Okay.
mortgage payment.
And what about rent?
What's that?
What about rent?
Rent usually floats a little around that. I didn't look up rent. I was looking specifically
Okay.
for mortgages.
Fair enough.
But
now
it's $1,000 is the average.
and you're averaging the whole country.
The whole country.
Rural Oklahoma
Yep.
or
Versus-
out in the desert in New Mexico
Yep.
versus San Francisco and New York,
Yes.
the rents are
Yes.
amazingly
I'm going to get to
high.
that.
Okay.
Yes. So you have the average
Mhm.
is 1,000.
Okay.
Average. I have to look it up on the link that I have here. It's about 32 to 34,000 average young millennial. This is borderlining Gen Z, but it's in the 23 to 25 age. Is the average income is $32 or $34,000 a year.
And look here, I've got exactly 34,000 as the average income. So you're spot on with that.
But why does it say 1977?
because it shows that when adjusted for inflation, the wages are identical.
Right.
They're flat.
Right. Adjusted for inflation, they're flat.
Yeah.
So so you are making my argument that they are facing the same exact.
They're being paid the same amount of money.
Yeah.
But they're way more productive. Their wages have not been hitched to their productivity. Productivity and wages became unhinged in the 70s.
But what I'm going to show you is that housing has relatively remained the same as well. That they say you should have, that your house payment should be 34 to 36% of your income.
Okay.
So when you do the math on that, that ends up being right around $1,000. So the average millennial income matches the suggested to the average what you should be spending on a mortgage is the average mortgage. They're equal. It's actually affordable. Not only just affordable, it's ideal. What millennials are making on average and what houses cost on average is actually the ideal percentage that they should be spending on houses.
So do you know why they are 50% less likely? Even though I can grant that statistic to you, I don't have something in front of me. I did previously, or at least I recall seeing something.
I just posted onto this article.
Good.
Is 7 or 8 of the links that I looked up on here. And one of them shows that, where is it? It's not showing
and that's fine. I can live with that figure.
No. But what
because I can still explain the problem.
Right, but what I'm going to explain the problem to you right now. And that is millennials, by and far, according to this article that I posted on here, called Where Educated Millennials Are Moving To, shows that by far more than any other generation, millennials are choosing to live in expensive cities where they cannot afford the rent and the mortgage that's there. And they're not buying because they are choosing, if you're saying it's an economic decision, in economic down times, they are choosing to move to cities that are more expensive instead of living where it's affordable.
This has happened before in history.
Yeah. But I'm just saying that
About 400 years ago it happened.
Go ahead.
Okay, during the Industrial Revolution, the agrarian society changed because automation began to appear on the farm. It started with Jethro Tull's seed drilling machine in the 17th century England. And because they no longer had to do as much work by hand, they no longer needed farm labor. Now, that caused a lot of people to relocate to cities.
This is not 400 years ago.
No, this is today.
I know, but today you can do your job from anywhere with the internet. You don't have to move to a city to do your job.
Oh, I don't know about that.
For the most part, a lot of the jobs, I mean, what job is happening in the city where you can't do
Retail? Food service? You can't do food service from your house.
No, but I'm saying career-wise, you're saying
Most of our jobs now are service industry
you're
jobs.
saying that they're moving to the city to work retail.
Because they're moving to the city to work in the service industry sector because the service industry is what's exploded. Manufacturing, producing things has gone down because technology has taken over a lot of those jobs.
Yep.
So they're not nearly as labor intensive as they were, 30, 40 years ago. So what people are doing is they're moving to the city literally to become waiters, Uber drivers, what have you, taxi drivers, to work in retail and things like that. They're working in the service industry. But they're also working in things like the financial sector. They're becoming teachers and so on and so forth.
Right.
That's not the only job, but if you're a young millennial,
but again, what is
your entry-level job is probably going to be in the retail, food service,
and there's no retail,
something in the service industry.
And so there's no service industries outside of big cities.
No, but the big city is where the most service industries are because there's the most people demanding services.
Okay.
So that's why people are moving to cities. They're looking for work. They're looking for opportunities. And maybe they're not very good at math and they're not recognizing that I'm going to have to offset my income from this job with much higher rents. But then people are crowding together and they're managing to afford it when they crowd into a small apartment with multiple roommates.
What about the choices they make and how they spend their money?
Well, one of the problems is things like healthcare is not really a choice.
No, I'm talking about 30% higher than the previous generation they're spending on superfluous items. Entertainment,
really?
Yes. I have a link that's in there that shows the statistics on that 30% beyond their previous generation are buying expensive coffees, buying clothing that fashion, like
how much of
unnecessary
their income
clothing.
are they spending?
They're spending, that's what I'm saying, the percentage more than the previous generation.
I mean, because we just gave farmers a $12 million bailout. Are we going to get onto them because they have steak or an iPhone now?
No, but I'm saying,
what's
comparatively,
what's
I'm
a
saying
luxury item here?
Your argument is that they're facing tougher economic times than we did, and I'm showing you that they're spending more on superfluous items than we ever did. So of course they're going to face more.
What is a superfluous item?
They're talking about $4 coffees. They're talking about clothing that is beyond need. So they're talking fashion clothing. They're talking. It's on the link here. In fact, here, let me pull it up. I saved the links on there.
So it's your coffee is the reason you're poor, folks.
Not just the coffee. Buying homes.
Mind you, $4 coffee or luxury coffee certainly didn't exist 30, 40 years ago. It was just a cup of Joe was a cup of Joe back then.
Yeah. And you still, I mean, what, a dime now is what equals what?
Oh, I don't know, $1 for all I know.
Okay, so you can still buy $1 coffee at McDonald's if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not. They're buying $5 coffees, $4 coffees at Starbucks. Taxis and Ubers are spending 53% more than the previous generation on taxis and Ubers.
Yeah, because they don't have cars.
Coffee that costs more than $4 each. The latest electronic gadget are spending 76% more. Clothes that don't necessarily need. These are 69% more. Eating at one of the hot restaurants in town, 79% more. Going to see live music, sports, or other events, 73% more. So they're spending that much more than their previous generation on superfluous items.
Okay,
and then they're complaining about not being able to afford a home because they're choosing to live where the homes are expensive and they're spending money on superfluous items, and it's the economy's fault.
Okay, but entertainment expenses are usually a marginal expense in a household budget. So, for example, you might spend $100 a month on entertainment, and I might spend $130.
How many concerts did you pay for? Did you go to? And how many concerts are people going to now?
And statistically, you could argue that I am spending 30% more on entertainment and blame all of my financial woes on the fact that I am spending 30% more. But unless we really know what numbers we're working with to begin with.
All right, so that's a
very misleading statistic, or at least potentially misleading statistic.
If you were just taking one of them, I listed for you 6 different areas.
But they're mostly entertain. Well, even then. So let's say I buy an iPhone that is
how about you buy a $4 coffee every day? How much money is that?
I don't know any millennials who are doing that. I honestly don't.
I work with millennials who are buying 2 or 3 a day.
Well, that's insane.
It is.
Yeah, if that's happening,
that is happening.
You've got to evaluate that. Get your little K-cups.
That's what I'm saying. That's what this is showing is happening. Mm-hmm. If you spend just one day, $4 a day on your way and stopping, how much is that a month?
Okay, no, that's a lot. That's over $100. It's like $120 bucks.
Yeah, it's a tenth of a house payment for one of these things.
Okay, but what about other things? For example, you take a look at college tuition.
Yeah.
Which is like 300% more than it was.
It's actually quadrupled in 10 years is what it shows.
In just 10 years, it's quadrupled?
Yes.
That's insane.
Exactly. So why is it that they were all told? Who told them to go to college?
Boomers.
Okay. So who told them? No, this is great. No, which boomer specifically? Who told them?
I'm talking about the whole generation. You remember, they were fed the same, millennials
By
have been fed the same narrative.
By who?
By our generation.
Which part of our generation?
And the one before it.
No. Which part of our generation specifically?
Their parents.
Their parents or their schools?
Well, both.
Cool. Teaching is 80% Democrats.
Okay.
The teaching profession is
everybody
80%.
Go out and vote to reelect Trump then. Okay.
No, but I'm saying the
really?
80% of teachers in our school districts are progressive liberal Democrats who've been teaching generation after generation go to college even though the prices have been quadrupling. Who was looking out for this generation? Mm-hmm. Was it the teachers?
Well, I think
was it the teachers looking out for them?
Don't the parents have a responsibility? But in all fairness, I think the world's macroeconomic conditions changed without anyone realizing it. And it changed very rapidly, and I think a lot of it has to do with technology. I don't think that anybody
technology or economics
expected what has happened to us both technologically and economically.
I think technology has had a bigger influence on what this generation is doing than economics. The ability,
I think they're connected.
Kind of. I guess you could say.
I think we're going to agree there. We might disagree on the degree to which one is responsible versus the other.
Yeah.
But technology has led to tremendous strides in productivity. It's creating a lot of things. You also have the application of science and things like marketing and technology. So before, in order for someone to market to you and I when we were teenagers, they had to catch us like at 7 or 8 o'clock when we sat down to watch the A-Team after doing our homework and taking our bath.
Dun, 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 dun. Oh wait, if I hum that too much, we'll probably have to pay licensing for.
Yeah. So literally, we were only marketed to in that window.
Yeah.
That's
and then
true.
Saturday mornings.
And Saturday mornings, right?
Yep.
Today,
on one of three
young
stations.
people,
On three stations altogether?
Today, young people are constantly being marketed to
Yep.
on here. And
All
the
of
end
us
result
are,
of all of us
Yeah.
are. And probably I would imagine that what's driving the mass coffee consumption and the spending on entertainment and expensive products and stuff is largely because the accuracy of the advertising is much greater than it was.
Heck
They're able to effectively do targeted marketing, and it's having a much better impact. We have 30, 40 years now of marketing science, if literally psychology being done to learn how to part people from their money.
Yeah, manipulate
And
people.
and I do think that in that way, technology in particular is really starting to make a change in how millennials make their economic decisions. And then you combine that with a lack of economic education in our schools and the fact that we still have schools telling young people that the path to prosperity is college, which was true in our generation.
Partly. I mean,
Largely true. I think it was more true in
more
our
true
generation
then than it was now.
than even before. Before our generation, if you had a strong back and a good work ethic, you could really make ends meet. You could really provide for your family. Our generation was very unique, that we were the generation that the path to prosperity was go to college, get a degree, and get a high-paying job. And I think we're probably the only generation.
I think you're seeing it with rose-colored glasses, though.
Well, I'm not saying it's necessarily rose-colored or right.
I'm just saying I don't think that is statistically true. I think that is your vision.
What do you
your
think
vision
is not statistically true? Because we were all preached. When you and I went to the same
right,
school,
exactly. We were preached,
all
but
told,
you're
go
saying
to college,
you're
get a
saying
degree.
that our generation actually benefited from that was actually a true statement about our generation. And
Well, I think I don't know that you have numbers
for that.
A lot of our generation, a quarter of our generation, went to college, and I would imagine that those of us who attended college and earned degrees, in general, are doing better than the 75% of our generation that did not go to college and earn a degree. And we're talking about financially, home ownership and other things like that.
Okay.
However, that changed starting in the 90s as automation kicked into high gear, technology kicked into high gear.
And I think
now we need
the
people
democratization of creativity changed that. I think there are more artisans and creators now than there ever has been because there's paths to sell your art and to publish and distribute your art. And I'm fine with that too. But I'm saying I think that has opened up the doors to so many more opportunities now outside of college than we had. We didn't have those opportunities. You had to have your foot in the door or whatever it was to get here. Now somebody can, the equal opportunity is greater now than it has been in the past.
You're probably correct
greater.
I do think we live in a generally more progressive society than we did than when you and I grew up.
There's more access. There's more equal access.
Which is why
to avenues of success now.
Internet freedom is so critical.
Yes. Yeah. So I see that because I just see so many as a content creator, as a person who is educated in content creation, coming through the late 90s and early 2000s when I suddenly saw all these people being able to create and they didn't know how to create, but now they had the tools to be able to do it, and everybody thought there was a photographer and everybody thought they were an artist and everybody thought they were a graphic designer because suddenly they had access to Photoshop for the first time. I'm like, I was at Photoshop 1.4 people. People were like, "Oh, I could download from LimeWire Photoshop 4, and suddenly I'm, Photoshop 5, and now I'm an artist." No, you're not. Anyway, the
you may be
democratization.
an artist, you may not be a good artist.
Yeah, but the democratization of the access to the tools to create, I think, has changed a lot. But again, I don't see that as an economic change. That was a technology change. That was a access change, not necessarily the economics hit them and that's all they could economically do.
Well, no, technology impacts economics.
Yeah.
The number one product of technology is actually leisure, but you're not seeing leisure being distributed either, you know? And so what's happening is the money,
Wait,
the
say that again?
productivity, the leisure, which is the product of technology,
Yeah.
is being consumed by the people at the very top. It's being withheld. In fact,
I
millennials
don't know.
are
I
harder workers statistically
I
than their
see-
peers and then their previous
I see this
generations.
generation as taking advantage of leisure more than any previous generation. Trips. I mean, it's even showing that. I even showed you how much more they're spending on leisure items and leisure things, concert tickets, entertainment, on leisure things, on extra clothing that they don't need, on expensive coffees, on leisure items, on technology, up to date. They got to have the most recent technology. These are leisure items that they are getting at a way higher rate than any other generation before them got.
Mm-hmm.
They are benefiting from
Okay.
the leisure of technology.
So from Medium Corporation, I think what they did is they distilled an article from Time Magazine.
Mm-hmm.
I'll post my links after the show. I
Okay.
see that you've already got yours there, which is fantastic. But they actually talk about how the narrative of the myth is, well, the narrative of the lazy millennial is actually a destructive myth and it's wrong. And they talk about their work ethic and they talk about their goals at work. And it says,
And maybe I'm not quite saying they're lazy. I'm saying bad choices and self-centeredness. Not
Because-
necessarily not necessarily lazy. I'm specifically talking about self-centered choices.
because
And there's
millennials work really hard,
Yeah,
according to the stats.
But I'm talking about the articles of how we've raised a society that emphasizes self-esteem over accomplishments.
well,
There's an article
millennials
on
didn't
that.
teach themselves the whole
I
self-esteem
understand that.
narrative.
I understand that. We created a generation of mostly self-centered children.
And you and I were preached the self-esteem narrative too.
Yeah.
That came from the boomer generation, the progressive element of the boomer generation.
Yeah, not the
Which
conservatives.
I don't think that's necessarily horrible, but at the same time, I don't know if that's necessarily healthy or not. But there are some positive outgrowths of
Yeah.
the self-esteem movement, such as respect and appreciation for bodily autonomy.
Mhm.
Today, we see it more recently as the Me Too movement,
Yep.
which I think is really important. You got to tell people, hey, you know what? Keep your hands off me, especially in the workplace. Keep your hands off me, period. In fact, not just especially in the workplace. Let me amend that for the record. You know, the whole thing. You know, we were forced to give kisses and hugs to everybody, and I get that. But the way I raise my children is I do not compel my children to show any kind of physical affection to anybody else, including myself.
Mhm.
If they choose, if they come to me asking for, affection or to offer affection, that's fine. I gladly accept. But I
It's-
do not request.
It's funny. I used to wrestle with
Mhm.
my boys, for
Well,
fun. Like I would
mhm.
wrestle with them,
Mhm.
and
It's a form of play. That's a little different.
Well,
It's
no,
not-
but
yeah.
what I'm getting at too is that once I had my daughter, and I was wrestling. I'm all. If she says stop, I need to. She needs to
Yes.
know that
And
because
that's
the
true
boys
with
are
any kid.
Yeah, and
Anybody.
the boys would be like and they wrestle, and they're trying to get out.
In
and they're
fact,
trying,
you have to tell them to stop.
Yeah, exactly. And but I recognize it as something like no, she needs to know that when she says stop, everybody should stop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that has to be taught. So I don't think the whole self-esteem thing was necessarily horrible, but I do think, and it does say here that myth number 6 on their list is millennials are subjected to bad parenting strategies. I don't know, but I do think we were given, or millennials have been given, inaccurate advice as
Yes.
for a path to prosperity.
And I believe that inaccurate advice did not come from the conservatives.
No, I think it came from everyone.
I
Because
believe.
the world did not foresee the differences that would occur in the early 21st
I'm sorry,
century.
as a conservative, and everybody that I was around who's conservative, we always talked about how you can't this whole self-esteem thing of everybody, and how many conservatives do you hear complaining about the whole everybody's getting a participation trophy? Conservatives don't believe in participation trophies. Conservatives don't believe in everything is self-esteem and everybody's a winner. That's not something conservatives preached. That's something liberals preached. That's something Democrats preached, and has created the downside to this generation.
Okay, well,
The
who
stuff,
invented the participation trophy? Not millennials.
right? But I'm saying it wasn't conservatives either. So we're narrowing down what the problem with society is. Quickly,
I hate it when I'm trying to type here real
Yep.
fast.
So,
But anyway,
basically here, I'll just read what I put on here as my final thought. Our society of self-centeredness and instant gratification has created a generation of narcissistic individuals who feel justified in being selfish and making selfish decisions than any other generation before it. By emphasizing self-esteem and setting unrealistic goals, we set this generation up to make poor decisions. And it's been mostly liberals and Democrats that have led this charge and brought this generation to this point, while conservatives were warning of the dangers of the self-esteem movement.
I do agree that millennials have been set up for failure.
Yes.
I think in spite of being set up, many of them are becoming successful.
That is true, because
I am
there,
very
no matter
hopeful
what
for them.
no matter what generation, there are exceptional people who, no matter what generation, no matter what race, no matter what anything, there are exceptional people who rise above everybody else.
Mm-hmm. So
And that is equal across all the boards. It's not like, well, if you're this race and you don't have very, no, there are exceptional humans that rise above the rest. The cream comes to the top, and in every generation that exists.
Well, they're the largest living generation, it says here.
Yep.
I'm going to post this article on why your theory about millennials and participation trophies is wrong.
Cool, post that.
So I'll be posting that as well. But I want to touch on, you're talking about how conservatives were sounding the warning alarms.
Yes.
And it was liberals who were pushing, this harmful narrative.
It's obvious that everything that has come from the schools has come from a liberal mindset.
Okay, but isn't
80%.
this a general overall description of the dynamic between conservatives and liberals? I mean, conservatives are always saying, pump the brakes, put the brakes, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, that's the definition of a conservative.
Yep.
A conservative is always saying, no, this is bad. This could be a mistake. We need to move slowly.
Yep.
Whereas a liberal is hitting that accelerator.
Yep.
But not every liberal change is bad. And not every
No.
conservative pump of the brakes is good.
But obviously this one was.
Well, this may be the case. I may have to concede that point to you for better or for worse. But if you're trying to say that everybody should be a conservative because conservatives are somehow inherently more wise, that I'm going to argue with you about.
Oh, okay.
Okay? So I can certainly hand
So
you this.
it's less wise to be cautious.
There are times to be cautious, and there are times to advance even into the darkness. There are times to do both, and genius requires knowing the difference.
Okay.
Being able to figure out, suss out from what you know, is it better to hit the accelerator or the brake?
I would generally say, if you had to choose one or the other, hit the brake.
And
in a general sense.
That might be the case, but again, you have to think things through.
Yeah.
So there are things that I might agree with conservatives on.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I generally
That's
agree.
right. This whole thing stemmed from an article we're talking about. As you get older, you get more conservative. That's what I'm all suddenly. I go. That's the because you have more to lose.
Right.
We talked about that.
Right.
Yeah.
But remember, there are times when I'm certainly going to side with the liberals. For example, remember, liberals is what brought us the 40-hour work week, the weekend, working conditions, workers' rights, minimum wages, which when they were created was intended to be a decent living wage.
Mass executions in China and Soviet Union.
Well, remember, anybody who advocates change is liberal,
Yep.
okay? But I guess, if they're executing conservatives, I don't see why this is bad. I'm making a horrible
He's
joke.
making a horrible joke, but even I recognize that as a joke.
And remember, conservatives have also done their fair share of harm. I guess, you can argue that the Nazis were in many ways conservative, but you can also argue in some ways they were liberals. And so the whole label conservative liberal, we kind of use it to indicate political affiliation here in the United States.
In
but
the West
generally,
specifically?
I don't know enough
Okay.
to say, but I will tell you that Chinese communists, hardcore Chinese communists, are not liberals in China. They are conservatives in China.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
conservative is just a person who says we're going to pump the brakes and we're going to stick with the old ways. The old ways are best. Whereas a liberal is a person who advocates change. And that change could be liberalization in terms of social policies, like we're going to let the gays get married and women can have abortions if they want to. Or liberal could be, if you come from a liberal society, it could be we want to have free market economics. We want to move to libertarianism. Remember, libertarians were the original liberals.
Gotcha.
There was a time when
Josh
libertarians
is saying
were considered
conservatives
liberal.
were part of the Nazi government, but I want to challenge that because there was the German government, German army, and then the Nazis were separate from.
Well, if you wanted to go anywhere in one, you had to be a member of the party.
Right, because
that's
they
how
were
they
the new party that took over.
Like
they weren't the old party.
The Wehrmacht, the regular German army, was not the Einsatzstoffe, the SS.
Yeah.
But it was, however, controlled by members of the Nazi Party. You had to be in good with the party.
Right.
You had to
Which
be
was
on
the new party, not the old
Exactly.
party. So
Exactly.
the idea, the conservatives were part of the Nazi. No, the Nazi were the progressives.
But they were socially conservative.
Okay, but
and they were culturally conservative.
but they were
too.
the new.
They were very much about the old ways.
They were the new way coming in.
They were the new way coming in, but they were also saying we need to go back to our roots, our Nordic roots, and stuff like that, our Aryan roots, and so on.
Well, man, it's been 40 minutes. Well, I guess it's been a little less because we got a 5-minute late start on our. Sorry about that. Sorry for streaming to the wrong thing. Now we're streaming on Kerncast here, and
I never explained my IC. I just felt like a Slurpee today, and we were out of water in the studio.
I know I'm out of bottled water in here. I'm so sorry. Usually we have bottled water, and I was out of it.
But yeah, this actually doesn't mean anything. I put it in the cup so as to display our brand, but.
And I just kept reaching out for ridiculous. My sponsored by 7-Up. No, we're not sponsored by 7-Up.
If you, by the way, if you
like that
sponsor,
sponsor, yeah. If you want to do that, I will do my radio voice for whatever And today we're sponsored by, So
we do accept sponsorships because we have a lot of little things in here.
If you like the idea, maybe you agree with him, maybe you agree with me. Either way, but if you like the idea of what we're doing, which is coming together and talking. That's what we want. That's what we're looking for sponsors. We're looking for people who believe in the idea of what we're doing and want to keep this going. I know that there's some things being talked about with Kerncast and maybe some things being expanded and maybe us going more than once a week on the show. Right. It's just, again, there are some costs to it. And
it's
there are
up
some
to
things,
you.
But so, yeah, sponsor us. You can go to kerncast.com. We are now on that list. It's on there. You can go to Kerncast and you can choose to sponsor our show or whatever it is. And man, yeah, we'll definitely say this show brought to you by Icy.
Well, and you can also contact us individually. Most
Absolutely.
of you, if you're watching the show, you probably know one or both of us friends with us. Reach out, contact us if you want to work out something that works for you. If you have a business or something,
I'm sure my kids
here.
who produce this show would like to maybe get paid to do it. Right now, it's just free child slave labor.
Wait! I thought I was progressive. I should be opposed to that, right?
Right. But hey, it's benefiting you. So as progressives do, they don't oppose anything.
Everybody's a hypocrite.
Yeah, everybody's a hypocrite. Yeah, exactly. So it's not unique to conservatives or liberals.
None of us are getting paid. This is all 100% volunteer endeavor. So
hypocrisy is a human condition.
It is.
It is.
But
so,
I like how we agreed on a couple points. Today.
Yeah.
So that's good. And that's
so you loser millennials. We agree that you guys.
No, I like millennials. I have a lot of hope for them. Millennials are my retirement plan.
I want to encourage you to make better decisions. Think it through and make better decisions.
Yeah, but hey,
Common
I'm
sense.
not gonna bust a guy for having an occasional Starbucks 2 or 3 times
No,
a day.
I'm not gonna bust him either until they're saying I can't afford to buy a home. Like, well, then you should make better financial decisions than you could because it is possible.
Yeah, but remember they've been handed a pretty bad hand of cards. Mm-hmm. So
you sure did.
All right.
On that note, this has been a valid answer on kerncast.com. Scott and Marshall, we'll catch you next time. And who knows what we'll be talking about? Maybe you know what we'll be talking about. Maybe you'll post on here and say, hey, guys, I have a question about this. Hey, I think you should talk about that. Hey, Scott, I think you're stupid, and here's why. We'll talk about it.
All right.
All right.
Will.
See you next time. Bye.